At first, she just grew quieter. She didn't laugh when he said something silly. She turned away when he reached for her in bed. Then came the late nights, the phone that never left her hand, and the sentence that made everything crystal clear. "You're overthinking things." He didn't yell, didn't create drama. He observed, watched as the person he loved more than life itself slowly turned into a stranger. And when the truth hit, he didn't break. He waited, chose the right moment. Then he laid the photos in front of her. No words, no accusations. In that instant, whatever trace of something real still flickered in her eyes died out. But that, too, was part of the plan. Because while she was busy playing love with someone else, he was already building his way out. And believe this, she wasn't ready for the man who stood before her in the end. She betrayed. He turned betrayal into a weapon. And by the time she realized what she had lost, it was far too late. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Please tell me which city and country you watched this video from. Now let's get started. My name is Nicholas, and for many years, I was married to Aurora. Like any relationship, ours had its moments of joy and hardship. Through it all, I clung to the belief that we'd weather the storms together. But with the benefit of hindsight, I now realize that while I was holding on tightly, she had already started to let go. The unraveling wasn't sudden. At first, the changes were barely noticeable. She stopped doing the little considerate things she used to. I dismissed it as exhaustion. Everyone goes through stressful times. People get worn out. I figured it was just a rough spell. But this wasn't a temporary dip. Something fundamental had shifted. No one wakes up one morning and simply decides to treat their partner like a nuisance. That kind of transformation has roots. It comes from somewhere. I became obsessed with finding out where. Aurora started coming home later than usual. When I asked about it, she gave vague answers, as if the question barely deserved a response. "Just out," she'd mutter, eyes locked on her phone screen. And if I pressed her, "Out where?" I'd get an exaggerated sigh or a dismissive glance. It felt like my concern had become a burden. That wasn't the Aurora I knew. The woman I married used to tell me everything, often in more detail than I asked for. Now, I was lucky if I got more than a monosyllable. Then came the phone fixation. It was always with her, clutched in her hand as she sat on the couch, brought with her even for a drink of water. At night, that screen's dull glow lit up our bedroom. I'd ask who she was talking to. "Just a friend," she'd say, emotionless. If I asked for a name, her tone would ice over. "Why does it matter?" she snapped once. Lying there next to her, I realized I couldn't pretend anymore. I turned to her and asked quietly, "Aurora, what's going on? Why are you pulling away from me?" She barely looked up. With an irritated sigh, she said, "If I had something to tell you, I would. Now let me sleep." That hit like a punch. Not long after, the truth I feared most came crashing down. A friend called me, his voice hesitant but serious. "Hey man, I don't want to be the one to say this, but I saw Aurora. She was with some guy, and it didn't look innocent." I froze. My first instinct was denial. That couldn't be. Not Aurora. Not the woman I married. There had to be another explanation. But then all the red flags, her late nights, her distance, the secrecy, flooded my mind. I couldn't deny it anymore. This hadn't come out of nowhere. It had been building for a long time. Suspecting something and having undeniable proof are two very different things. I needed evidence, something concrete. I knew where to look. Her phone. Lately, she'd guarded it like it held state secrets. No matter where she went, even into the bathroom, it never left her side. She never set it down. And if she used it around me, she angled the screen away, just enough to make sure I couldn't see. That alone wasn't proof. But I knew. Deep down, I knew. One evening, my chance finally came. She left her phone on the couch and walked into the bathroom. My hands trembled as I picked it up. This was it. I swiped to unlock it, only to be stopped cold. The passcode had changed. I tried the old one just in case. Nothing. My heart sank. We'd never hidden things like this before. We always shared our passwords. This wasn't some accident. She was deliberately keeping me out. I put the phone back exactly as I found it and stared at it, heart pounding. If she was cheating, she'd slip up eventually. They always do. If I couldn't find answers in her phone, I'd have to get them another way. I'd have to see it with my own eyes. And a few days later, I got the chance. Aurora told me she was going out to run a quick errand. No specifics, no mention of where or with whom. It didn't sit right. So, a few minutes after she left, I grabbed my keys and quietly followed. She drove through a few neighborhoods before pulling up to a house I didn't recognize. She parked, got out with ease, and walked up to the door like she'd done it 100 times. No hesitation, no looking over her shoulder. The door opened, and a man, someone I'd never seen before, greeted her with a smile like he'd been waiting for her. She smiled back and walked in. I took photos, every step, every second. I didn't confront her. I didn't call out. I didn't storm up to the door. I sat in my car staring at that door, watching the truth unfold. And when the weight of silence became unbearable, I started the engine and drove home. She returned that night as though nothing had happened. That, more than anything, broke me. The ease with which she slipped back into our shared life, as if it were all still real. But for me, it was over. The guessing, the hoping, the waiting. I had my answer, and it was enough. I wasn't going to let it simmer in silence any longer. I asked her to join me in the living room. She rolled her eyes, clearly annoyed, but slumped onto the couch anyway, arms crossed, eyes sharp, like I was already wasting her time. I inhaled deeply, met her gaze, and said with calm finality, "This ends tonight. Or we do." My voice stayed level. No yelling, no threats. Just a truth spoken plainly, a line drawn with quiet resolve. Her face twisted in irritation, and she shook her head. "I seriously don't know what you think is going on," she said, her tone flat, void of emotion. "You're imagining things." I didn't respond with words. Instead, I pulled my phone from my pocket, held the screen toward her, and let the images speak for me. There she was, entering his place, smiling, laughing, her posture far too intimate for denial. I watched her closely. For a split second, her expression cracked, her eyes widened, just barely. She'd been caught, but just as fast, it was gone. The flicker of guilt was quickly consumed by something colder, rage. "You were following me?" she snapped, voice rising. "Are you seriously spying on me now? What kind of paranoid freak does that, Nicholas?" Something hardened inside me then, like a door quietly locking shut. She wasn't sorry, not even close. No regret, no ownership. Instead, she flipped the script, made me the villain for catching her in the lie. I exhaled slowly and nodded once. "Got it," I said, rising to my feet. No shouting, no accusations. There was nothing left to salvage. She'd already chosen her path. The days that followed were hollow and silent. We shared the same house, but it felt like we were living in two separate dimensions. No conversations, no pretending, just two strangers orbiting the same dead space, waiting for the inevitable. She didn't explain. She didn't apologize. And I didn't need her to. Her silence told me everything. I knew she hadn't ended it. She wasn't planning to. I didn't beg. I didn't cling. That's not love. That's surrender. And I wasn't about to lose myself trying to hold on to someone who'd already let go. While she moved through our days like nothing had changed, I quietly scheduled a meeting with an attorney and started the process. If she wanted to be with him, fine. She could go. But I wouldn't let her wreck me on the way out. Then one morning, As I was getting ready for work, something unexpected happened. Aurora stepped into the room. I was halfway through buttoning my shirt when she spoke, calm and almost casual. "I'm making dinner tonight." My hands froze. I looked over, caught off guard. Aurora hadn't cooked in ages, not since everything started unraveling. Lately, she barely looked at me. Cold stares, monosyllabic replies, like my presence was something she had to tolerate. And now, this? A home-cooked meal? I turned to face her. She stood by the dresser, eyes on her phone, deliberately avoiding mine. That's when I knew something wasn't right. I waited, thinking she might explain, but she didn't. "All right," I said, voice flat. If this was a performance, I wasn't about to play along. At work, the thought of it kept circling. Was this a peace offering? Guilt trying to wear the face of normalcy? Or just the next act in whatever game she thought she was playing? It didn't really matter, because what she didn't know was that I was already gone in every way that counted. The papers were prepped, waiting for the right moment. And more than that, there was something else she'd never seen coming. While she'd been off chasing secrecy and excitement, I'd found a quiet, unexpected connection of my own with her best friend. What started as venting, long conversations about Aurora and the mess she was making, had slowly evolved into something deeper. Someone who saw past the mask Aurora wore, someone who genuinely understood. So if this dinner was meant to reel me back in, she was too late. I wasn't that man anymore. I wouldn't fight. I wouldn't plead. I'd walk away, on my terms. That night, I stepped into the house with a strange, steady peace in my chest. The scent of food cooking hit me as soon as I walked through the door, something I hadn't smelled in our kitchen in what felt like forever. There was a time when that scent might have meant something. Not anymore. Aurora moved around the kitchen like she hadn't set fire to everything, placing dishes, pouring glasses of wine, a faint smile on her lips that didn't reach her eyes. We ate mostly in silence. She didn't ask about my day. I didn't ask about hers. The only sounds were silverware against porcelain and the quiet thrum of tension between us. Midway through the meal, I set my fork down and studied her. She looked calm. Too calm. Like someone rehearsing a monologue she'd already memorized. I leaned back slightly, kept my tone neutral. "So, did you end it?" She didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned back too, and for the first time that night, her lips curved into a satisfied little smile, like this was the moment she'd been waiting to unveil. "I'm leaving you," she said simply. She let it hang there, then added, "Aziel makes me feel alive. There's passion with him, excitement. He sees me. He makes me feel like I matter again. With you, it's just routine, predictable." Her words landed like the final move in a game she thought she'd already won. No guilt, no hesitation, just the truth, served cold. And in that instant, I realized something profound. This wasn't a tragedy. This was freedom. And I was ready. I know it's wrong, but I can't seem to stop myself. I'm starving for something real, even if it's fleeting. I've been emotionally disconnected for so long, and he reminded me what it feels like to actually be alive. I can't go back to feeling invisible in my own marriage. I exhaled slowly, more amused than upset. There was a time when those words would have destroyed me, when I would have begged her to stay, to reconsider, to fight for us. But now? Now they felt like the final lines of a story that had overstayed its welcome. A calm, genuine smile tugged at my lips. I stood, walked to the bedroom, and returned with a neat stack of documents. I laid them on the table in front of her and slid them her way. "Great," I said, my voice steady and composed. "I've already taken care of everything. All that's left is your signature." For the first time that night, she hesitated. This wasn't what she expected from me. Her eyes darted between the paperwork and my face, searching for any sign of emotion to latch onto, but I gave her nothing. Just silence. Then, ding-dong. Her head snapped toward the front door. She wasn't expecting anyone, but I was. I'd been waiting for this moment all night. I pushed my chair back and walked to the door with deliberate calm. When I opened it, she was standing there, effortless, confident, Aurora's best friend. The woman who had once held all of Aurora's secrets. The woman I turned to when I realized my marriage had already ended. I stepped aside and motioned toward her. "Meet my girlfriend." The look on Aurora's face was unforgettable. It wasn't just shock, it was betrayal, disbelief, maybe even a trace of remorse. She'd forgotten the first rule of the game: if you're going to play, be prepared to lose. I won't lie, Aurora didn't take it well once she saw the tables had turned. She erupted. 1 second she was stunned, the next she was shouting, calling me names, accusing me of losing my mind. But I stayed quiet. I didn't need to engage. My part was over. The divorce papers sat untouched on the table. The choice was hers now: sign them or let the court system handle it. At first, she pretended not to care, acting composed, as if she was ready to walk away with grace. But I knew her better than that. When it hit her that this was real, she became the version of herself I'd always dreaded. The one who clung to vengeance when things didn't go her way. This wasn't about our broken relationship anymore. It was about retaliation. She launched a full attack, trying to ruin me. She went to court and cast herself as the victim, claiming I was controlling, manipulative, and emotionally cruel. Said I made her feel isolated, worthless, shattered her bit by bit. And she didn't stop there. She spun lies, things that never happened, just to reshape the story and turn me into the villain. And the worst part? Some people believed her. That's the thing about lies. Say them with enough certainty and they start to sound like truth. But I refused to let her rewrite our story. When it was my turn to speak, I let the evidence do the work. I had photos of her at her lover's home, messages that left no room for doubt. This wasn't just a friend. And financial records, clear proof she'd been draining our shared account to fund her affair. My lawyer laid it all out, piece by piece, every transaction, every detail of her betrayal. But what really landed was the emotional fallout. I'd spent months drowning in confusion, questioning my reality, wondering if I was the problem. My attorney argued that her deceit and manipulation inflicted lasting psychological harm, and the judge listened. When the verdict came down, I saw the loss in Aurora's eyes. The asset split might have looked fair on paper, but the mountain of evidence tilted everything. I walked away with most of what I'd worked for. She didn't get a clean escape. She didn't win. In trying to break me, she only revealed who she really was. And when I stepped out of that courtroom, I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. You'd think I'd feel triumphant, vindicated, maybe even whole. But the truth? Nobody walks away from something like that without scars. I told myself I'd moved on. I started seeing Aurora's best friend. She'd been there through it all, saw the worst of it, and offered a kind of compassion I hadn't known in years. Still, something inside me had shifted. No matter who I was with, I found myself bracing for the moment it would all fall apart again. That kind of betrayal leaves a wound. I learned the hard way that trust isn't given freely. It's earned. And once it breaks, it never quite returns to what it once was. Will I ever get married again? I'm not sure. It's not that I don't believe in love. It's that I don't know if I can see it the same way anymore. It's like touching a hot stove as a kid. You only need to get burned once to never forget the pain. Even years later, you still flinch near the heat. And me? I was burned badly. But I walked away with a lesson I'll never let go of. Sometimes, the deepest wounds come from the ones closest to us. And when they cut you, the most powerful thing you can do isn't to lash out or get revenge. It's to walk away, whole. Holding on to bitterness is a waste of energy. Honestly, it drains more than it gives. The most powerful form of revenge? Thriving, rising beyond the hurt, becoming unforgettable, so far out of reach that they'll never get close again. Let your evolution echo as a reminder of what they let slip through their fingers. And believe me, Aurora felt the sting of that loss. That was all the closure I ever needed. So, that's the journey I've been on. A bit of a wild ride, sure. But isn't that life? Just when you think you know someone, when you believe you've built something real together, suddenly, it's gone, tossed aside like it meant nothing. But here's the truth that matters most. I didn't let it destroy me. And if you ever find yourself in a moment like that, don't let it destroy you either. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you liked this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you. No one expected that a weekend meant to be a simple bachelorette trip would end with shattered relationships. She left with promises of fun and innocent jokes, while he stayed behind with plans for the future, certain their happiness was unbreakable. A couple of days. Was that really enough to turn love to ashes? To trade years of devotion for a moment of madness? In that very moment, a single call could change everything. Words that would haunt him, no matter what he did. A mistake that could never be undone. But what if betrayal isn't the end, but the beginning of something greater? Something he was too blind to see before. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Please tell me which city and country you watch this video from. Now, let's get started. The moment Viviana said yes to my proposal, I felt unstoppable. After spending 3 years by her side, I had no doubt she was the one I wanted to build a life with. In my eyes, what we had was perfect. Everything between us seemed to fall effortlessly into place. Her chuckles at my awful jokes, the familiar way her fingers curled into mine during walks, the peace of simply existing in the same space. Life without her felt impossible to imagine. We jumped into wedding planning almost immediately. Viviana took charge of most of it, and I didn't mind at all. As long as she was going to be my wife, nothing else really mattered. One night, while we were sorting through the guest list, she casually mentioned her bachelorette trip. "Rebecca and the girls are thinking about Vegas," she said, eyes lit up with excitement. "Vegas?" I gave her a curious look. "It's just going to be a fun, chill weekend," she reassured me with a smile. "Nothing crazy." I laughed. "All right, just don't blow the honeymoon budget at the blackjack tables." She grinned, leaned in, and kissed me. "Relax, I'll be on my best behavior." And I believed her. The morning she left, I helped her get her suitcase together. We joked like we always did, slipping into that easy rhythm we had. Everything felt completely normal. "You sure you don't want to crash the party?" she teased with a sideways glance. "Tempting," I said, smirking, "but I trust you. Besides, I've got my own night out planned." She playfully punched my arm. "Just make sure you behave." "I'll survive until Monday," I replied. That Friday morning, I drove her to the airport and kissed her goodbye at the terminal, watching her disappear into the security line. What I didn't realize then was that it would be the last time I looked at her without feeling the weight of betrayal. That first night she was gone, I didn't think twice about it. I texted her good night, and she sent back a quick reply. "Night, love. Miss you already." That evening, I had my bachelor hangout. Nothing wild, just a relaxed night at Alistair's place with a few close friends. I was never into the whole last night of freedom cliché. We grabbed some pizza, cracked open a few beers, and swapped old stories. It was low-key, just the way I wanted it. When the night ended, I felt content, ready, excited for what was coming next. I figured Viviana was having fun too, and I was genuinely happy for her. But as the weekend wore on, Her messages started coming in slower, shorter. She stopped answering calls, and when she did text back, it was hours later, always saying she was busy. I tried to brush it off. She was in Vegas after all. Maybe she just didn't want to be glued to her phone. Still, something didn't sit right. A quiet unease crept in. Late Sunday night, my phone buzzed. It was Rebecca. Her voice was low and trembling. "Declan, I need to tell you something." "Rebecca? Is everything okay? What's going on with Viviana?" She hesitated. "Not really. Something happened. I didn't know how to keep this from you. Viviana cheated." The words struck like a hammer to my chest. "What? No, that's not possible." "I saw it happen," she said softly. "She met a couple of guys at a club. They were drinking, dancing. Things got out of hand. I tried to pull her away, but she wouldn't listen. I couldn't speak. My thoughts spun in circles, unable to make sense of what I'd just heard. "I'm really sorry," she said, barely audible. "But I thought you deserved the truth." I ended the call silently, my hands shaking. My brain raced through the weekend's events, rewinding every message, every silence, every excuse. It all made sense now. She hadn't just been caught up in the fun, she had crossed a line. With not one, but two strangers. The following morning, I couldn't keep it bottled up anymore. I called her. After a few rings, she picked up, her voice groggy. "Hey Declan, what's going on? It's early." "We need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "About what?" she asked, still half asleep. "Rebecca called me." Silence. "She told me what happened." A pause followed, long, suffocating. Then I asked, "Viviana, did you sleep with them?" Her answer came out in a whisper. "Yes." That single word shattered me. "I was drunk. I didn't mean for it to happen," she said, her voice cracking. "Didn't mean for it to happen?" My voice rose. "You're about to marry me, and you chose to sleep with two complete strangers. That wasn't an accident. It was a decision." She broke down. "I'm sorry, Declan. I love you. I never wanted to hurt you." I snapped. "Then why did you? How do you claim to love someone and still do this to them?" "I know," she cried. "I hate myself for it. I'll do anything to fix this." "You can't fix it," I said, each word sharp and final. "There's no coming back from this." "The wedding, are you calling it off?" "Yes." "You're really ending our engagement over this?" she asked, her voice caught somewhere between shock and pleading. "I told you already, I was drunk. It didn't mean anything." "You had a threesome, Viviana," I said, my voice cracking as it rose. "Two men, at the same time. And you want me to believe that was meaningless?" "I'm sorry, Declan," she said, her voice quivering. "It was the night before I got married. I wanted to do something reckless. It wasn't about feelings. I'm in love with you." "So now it was on purpose?" I fired back. "Because earlier you said it was just a drunken mistake." She steadied her voice. "Yes, I'm not going to lie anymore. I chose to do it. It was impulsive and wild and stupid, but it wasn't about anyone but me. It didn't change the way I feel about you. I didn't think you'd ever know." "So what? You were just going to keep this secret forever?" I said, throat tight with rage. "If I hadn't found out, you would have married me without a second thought?" "I never wanted this to hurt you," she whispered. "Well, too bad," I said coldly. "We're done. The wedding's off, and I don't ever want to see you at my place again." Before she could say another word, I hung up. The silence that followed hit harder than her voice ever could. Almost immediately, my phone started buzzing, her name lighting up the screen again and again. I stared at it, pulse pounding, but I couldn't answer. I wouldn't. I couldn't sit through another hollow apology. A few days later, she came back from Vegas and let herself into the house. I was already there, sitting on the couch, lost in a fog of thoughts. "Declan," she said softly, setting her bags down. Can we please talk? What are you doing here? I asked, voice like ice. I told you not to come back. She lowered herself onto the edge of the couch, hands clenched tightly together. I'm sorry, she said, barely above a whisper. I don't even understand how I let it happen. I love you more than anything, and I want to fix this. Fix it? I repeated, the word echoing in my chest. You think this can be repaired? You wrecked everything we built. I'll do whatever it takes, she said urgently. Therapy, counseling, whatever you need. Just don't give up on us. I looked at her without flinching. There's nothing left to fight for. The trust is gone, and without that, there's nothing. Tears started to stream down her face. I said nothing. I felt absolutely nothing. Pack your things, I said flatly. You can't stay here. She didn't protest. Without a word, she climbed the stairs, gathered her belongings, and left. I stayed right where I was, staring at the empty space beside me where she used to be. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating, like the very air had turned against me. Then came the next brutal task, calling everyone, the guests, my family, our friends. I had to explain that the wedding wasn't happening anymore, that it was over. Each conversation drained a little more out of me. Every time I repeated the story, it felt like reopening the same wound. Most people didn't know what to say. Some were stunned silent, but nobody asked why I ended it. They got it, even if it didn't all make sense. The conversations blended into one long, weary blur of sympathy and disbelief. Later that night, my phone lit up again. This time, it was Rebecca. Hey, Declan, she said gently when I answered. I just wanted to see how you're holding up. I sank back into the couch, eyes unfocused. Not great, I admitted. It's been rough. Yeah, I figured, she said softly. If you need to talk, get out of the house, clear your head. I'm here. I don't know, I said. I'm not really up for anything right now. We don't have to do anything big, she offered. Just a drink, a little company. Might help, you know? I hesitated. The room felt like it was caving in around me. Yeah, I said at last. That might not be the worst idea. Okay, she said warmly. I'll send you where to meet. That evening, I met her at a small, quiet bar just a few blocks away. The place was calm, the soft murmur of conversation and the occasional clink of glasses filling the space. I chose a corner seat, and she joined me not long after. She scanned the room briefly before giving me a kind, knowing smile. Hey, she said, her voice low and comforting. You doing okay? I gave a half shrug, unsure how to respond. I'm still trying to process everything. I don't even know what to feel. She nodded slowly, sipping her drink. I get it. You've been through hell. It hit me out of nowhere, I said. I thought I knew who she was. We were days away from forever. And now, it's just gone. Her expression softened. You didn't deserve any of this, Declan, she said quietly. She didn't see what she had in you. You deserve someone who sees you, someone who truly gets who you are and treats you like you matter. I turned toward her, caught off guard. There was a fire in her eyes, something new, or maybe something I'd never allowed myself to notice before. Thanks, Rebecca, I murmured, my voice dropping without intention. That really means a lot coming from you. Her smile was soft, but something about it lingered. Her gaze held mine a moment too long, and now I couldn't miss that flicker of playfulness behind her eyes. She leaned in ever so slightly, her knuckles brushing against mine, and it sent a quiet shiver through me. You're a good man, Declan, she said, her voice lower now, more vulnerable. You deserve better than what Viviana ever gave you. My throat tightened, my heart beginning to pound. Maybe it was the drinks, maybe the sting of the breakup still raw, or maybe it was something entirely different. But the air between us felt changed. Her hand reached for mine, fingers curling lightly around my wrist, grounding me. "You don't have to go through this alone," she added. "I'm not going anywhere." Her touch sparked something deep in me. I glanced at her, trying to understand the shift I felt in her voice, her eyes. Rebecca had always been my steady ground, my safe place, but now something between us had turned. "I've felt something for you for a while," she whispered, unsure yet resolute. "But you were with Viviana. I didn't want to be the reason anything fell apart." "Now that Viviana and I were done," she said, it felt like she could finally speak the truth. Her thumb brushed softly across the back of my hand, a gesture so small, yet impossibly intimate. "I've always cared about you, not just as a friend," she said, her words hanging between us, fragile but honest. My chest felt tight, my pulse unsteady. Her confession knocked me off balance, but in a strange way, everything made more sense now. "All this time, you really liked me?" I asked, my voice thick with disbelief. She nodded slowly, her gaze locked on mine with a quiet intensity. "I did, but you seemed happy with her, and I didn't want to get in the way, so I kept it all to myself." I sat there in silence, trying to absorb what she had just shared. Then she shifted closer. Her eyes searched mine, asking a question without words, and then she kissed me. It began softly, hesitantly. Her lips were tentative, testing the waters, but it deepened fast, emotion surging between us. My heart raced, the world around us fading as everything else disappeared. The hurt, the mess, it all fell away. One moment blurred into the next, and by night's end, we were wrapped in each other, tangled up in her bed. It wasn't just about the heat between us. It was healing, in a way. Being close to someone who saw me, who understood the wreckage I'd been navigating, made it easier to breathe. Rebecca didn't just distract me from the pain, she helped me step outside of it, even if only for a little while. In the weeks that followed, what we had began to take shape. It hadn't been planned, but it felt natural, like it was meant to be there. We spent more and more time together, and each moment with her felt like a slow, steady return to life. It wasn't about replacing Viviana. It was never about that. This was something new, something genuine. I was drawn to Rebecca in a way I hadn't expected, like gravity I hadn't realized was there. One quiet afternoon, Rebecca was curled up on the couch with a novel, her legs tucked under her. I was in the kitchen brewing coffee. The stillness between us was peaceful, grounding. But just as I reached for the kettle, a knock echoed from the front door. I paused, thrown off. When I opened it, I froze. Viviana stood there, eyes rimmed red, her expression a picture of regret and unraveling. "Declan, please," she said, voice shaky. "Can we talk? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." She looked broken in a way I'd never seen before. "I know I messed up, but please just give me a chance to explain." I stood there, unsure how to respond. I hadn't expected to see her again, especially not like this. But before I could gather my thoughts, I noticed Rebecca standing from the couch behind me, her expression unreadable, her silence loud. Viviana's gaze followed mine and landed on Rebecca. Her face twisted. "You're with her?" she asked, disbelief sharp in her voice. I tried to stay composed, but she stepped forward, her words aimed at Rebecca like knives. "You really think you can just take my place?" Rebecca didn't flinch. "I'm not here to replace anyone," she replied steadily. "I'm here because I care about Declan, something you stopped doing a long time ago." Viviana's face flushed with fury. She turned back to me, her voice cracking with desperation. "You can't be serious about this," she pleaded. "After everything we went through, you're just going to throw it away?" "I love you, Declan. I know I screwed up, but I want to make it right. Let me fix this. Please." My mind was spinning. Some piece of me still remembered what it had felt like to love her, but it was buried beneath betrayal and pain. and standing behind me was Rebecca, the person who had stood by me through it all. "It's over, Viviana," I said, my voice steady and sure. "You made your choice, and now I've made mine." Her face crumpled, disbelief and anguish crashing over her. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely there. "Don't do this. Don't let her destroy what we had." I looked her dead in the eye, my voice turning cold. "You destroyed it, Viviana." And with that, everything finally settled into place. "That's enough. You have to leave now." Her eyes shimmered with tears, but she stayed silent. Without a reply, she turned her back to me and walked away, the door shutting behind her with a final, echoing thud. In the weeks that came after, a new kind of normal began to take shape. Viviana was no longer in my life, and it felt like the end of a long, unfinished story. At the same time, Rebecca and I grew closer, united by the same longing to break free from everything we'd once known. We decided to move, to start over in a place that held no memories, no history. Somewhere anonymous, somewhere clean. It was a risk, but it felt right. We were finally ready to create a life that belonged only to us. I never reached out to Viviana again. I ignored her calls, left her messages unread. Slowly, the bitterness I'd held onto began to dissolve, replaced by a kind of peace I hadn't experienced in a long time. Rebecca and I stepped forward into something new, something that held promise, maybe even happiness. My past would always walk with me, a quiet echo in the background. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid to leave it behind and see what lay ahead. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. Deception was just another layer to cover the betrayal. "Honey, what's wrong? What happened?" Patricia Brown asked as her daughter Mary rushed into their home in tears. Patricia immediately embraced her, soothing her by patting her back with one hand and running her fingers through her hair. "He's gone, Mom!" Mary cried out. "Daniel's gone!" Her voice cracked as she pulled away from her mother, handing over an envelope to her father, Michael, with trembling hands. Patricia held her daughter close again, trying to calm her down. Michael took the envelope but paused before opening it. "Mary, where's William?" he asked, concerned. "He's at Daniel's place," Mary managed between sobs. "I shouldn't have driven like this with him." Her body trembled as she spoke. Earlier that day, Daniel had taken their youngest, James, to Michael and Patricia's house, asking them to watch over him because he had an errand with William. But within a couple of hours, Mary had called her parents, nearly hysterical, after receiving divorce papers at work. Now she sat on their couch, tears streaming down her face, with her mother holding her tightly. Michael, seated in a chair nearby, opened the envelope and began reading the legal document inside. A heavy silence hung in the room as Michael read the petition for divorce. His face darkened as he shook his head. No warning, no conversation. Daniel had blindsided Mary with legal papers, serving them to her at work in an act that left her shocked and humiliated. As he continued to read, his brow furrowed deeper. "Mary, he's filing for divorce on the grounds of adultery." "What? No!" Mary exclaimed, her voice filled with a mix of outrage and pain. "He's convinced himself I was cheating with someone at work, but I never did. I would never cheat on Daniel. I love him." Her words came out in broken sobs, her desperation palpable. Michael clenched his jaw, thinking angrily, "I'll destroy him for this. Making up lies to paint Mary as the villain. He's probably the one who's been unfaithful." He continued reading the petition, and his eyebrow raised in disbelief, a telltale sign of his frustration. "What made Daniel think you were unfaithful?" Michael asked, his eyes narrowing. Mary shifted uncomfortably, glancing between her father and mother. "I don't know," she said, her voice quieter now. "Maybe I hugged one of our sales guys when he closed a big deal." Her tone was tentative, as though she were trying to make sense of it herself. Michael studied his daughter, his expression unreadable. "Just a hug?" he pressed. Mary hesitated, then admitted, "There was more. One time after work at happy hour, a coworker kissed me. I'd had too much to drink, but as soon as I realized what was happening, I pushed him away. That's it, Dad. Nothing else happened. I swear." Her words tumbled out in a rush, and her hands twisted the tissue in her lap. Michael's eyebrows shot up again, a reaction that did not go unnoticed by Patricia. "What are you getting at, Michael?" she asked sharply, irritation creeping into her voice. "Are you trying to accuse our daughter of something?" "No, not yet," Michael responded, though his voice was measured. "But we've known Daniel for, 7 or 8 years now? I work with him every day. This isn't like him at all. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on in his head." "I'll tell you what's going on," Patricia snapped, glaring at her husband. "He's full of it. And after what he's done to our daughter, you're actually questioning her?" She passed Mary a box of tissues as the pile of used ones grew on the coffee table. "How can you even think of siding with him after this?" "I'm not taking sides until I've finished reading this," Michael said, his tone flat, though his eyes stayed on the divorce petition. "Mary, who exactly does he think you're having an affair with?" Mary wiped her face, pulling back from her mother's arms. "Oliver Smith," she answered, her voice small. "One of the sales reps at work. But I didn't. I think Daniel saw something and just misunderstood." Michael nodded slowly, absorbing her words. The room fell into a heavy silence, with the weight of accusations, misunderstandings, and emotions filling the air. "What could he have possibly seen?" Mary cried out again, her voice trembling. Michael's face, initially full of empathy and understanding, gradually hardened, his expression becoming cold and unreadable, something his wife, Patricia, often referred to as his stony face. His eyes stayed fixed on the papers he was reading. Daniel was requesting a 50-50 split of custody for their son William, naming himself as the custodial parent. With a stern look, Michael turned to face his daughter, the weight of the situation clear in his expression. But Daniel wasn't asking for anything related to James Oliver Roy. In fact, he wanted his name removed from James's birth certificate entirely, and requested that James's last name be changed. This revelation left Patricia and Mary in shock, their disbelief palpable. Mary collapsed into her mother's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. "Mary, Mary!" Michael raised his voice, attempting to cut through the chaos. Her cries ceased for a moment as she looked up at her father, her tear-streaked face showing desperation. Patricia watched her husband, concerned by his lack of warmth toward their daughter. "Daniel claims you cheated on him with Oliver Smith," Michael said firmly. "James's middle name is Oliver because you said you liked it. Now I'm asking you, Mary, did you cheat on Daniel with Oliver Smith?" The accusation hung in the air as Mary let out another wail, burying her face in her mother's embrace. Patricia, fed up with the confrontation, shot Michael a furious glare. "Can you stop this?" she hissed. Michael, unfazed, turned his icy gaze toward his wife. "Did you know?" he asked, his voice devoid of emotion. "What exactly was it that you knew?" Patricia's anger flared, but Michael remained calm, picking up the paper that had shattered their family's illusion. "This is why Daniel isn't fighting for custody of James," he said, holding up the DNA test. "It says here that the probability of Daniel being James's father is less than 0.002%. So, Patricia, how long have you known about this?" Decades of marriage had taught Patricia how to read her husband, and she could sense that their relationship was teetering on the edge of disaster. If she admitted that Mary had confided in her doubts about James's paternity, it could lead to the end of their marriage. But if she lied, and Michael found out, it would be over for sure. Patricia took a deep breath and made her choice. "I didn't know," she said quietly, her voice shaking. "This is the first time I've heard any of this. I think Mary is as shocked as we are." Michael's response was flat, almost emotionless. "I doubt that," he said. "But there's one way to settle this." His eyes darkened. "I want to see both of your phones. Now." Patricia shot up from her seat, her face flushing with anger as she pointed an accusing finger at her husband. "You are not invading our privacy," she spat. You're not going through our phones. Michael stared at her, his expression unchanged. People with nothing to hide nothing, he said slowly. I assume you're hiding something, so let me make this clear. Either you both unlock your phones and hand them over right now, or I'll be filing for divorce tomorrow. Patricia's eyes narrowed into slits of fury. I've never given you a reason not to trust me. We're not handing over our phones and we're not getting a divorce, she said, her voice laced with venom. Michael looked at her with a mixture of sadness and resolve. I've caught you in little lies for years, he said quietly. I let them slide because I thought the fights that would follow weren't worth it. But I'm ashamed of what I've tolerated, and now, seeing this, seeing our daughter try to deceive a man into raising someone else's child, well, that changes everything. His voice grew colder. It's simple. Phones or divorce. If either of you thinks I'm bluffing, you're welcome to test me. For the first time, both Patricia and Mary glimpsed a side of Michael they had never seen, a man driven by a steely determination that wouldn't bend or break. Patricia, her face twisted with rage, screamed back at him, It's not going to happen! I'll take you for everything in the divorce. I'll take everything you have, and you'll be lucky if you even have your car to sleep in. Michael stood up abruptly, throwing the papers onto the coffee table. His eyes swept over his wife and daughter before he turned away, shaking his head in disbelief as he walked towards the kitchen. Moments later he returned, this time holding a small plastic Ziploc bag. Gripping it by the corners, he used it as a makeshift glove to gather up the crumpled napkins scattered in front of Mary. With a practiced flick, he reversed the bag back to its original state, sealing the napkins inside with a snap of his fingers along the zipper. Patricia, her voice escalating into a near scream, demanded, What do you think you're doing? Her hands trembled with rage, pointing accusingly at the bag in his hand. In nearly 3 decades of marriage, Michael had never faced this fiery side of her. For the first time, he questioned whether he truly knew his wife at all. I'm going to ask Daniel who he used for that DNA test when he found out James wasn't his son. Then, I'm going to get my own test to find out if Mary is even mine, or if you've been lying to me for almost 30 years. Patricia let out a shriek and lunged at him, her nails clawing viciously at his face. It's impossible to truly understand the sensation of losing your breath until it happens to you. It's a phrase people throw around, but the reality is far more terrifying. When the air is forced out of your lungs, panic takes hold instantly. The absence of oxygen creates a sheer terror, as if you're moments away from death. Those seconds before your lungs refill stretch into what feels like eternity, as your body fights desperately for breath. Despite the decades that had passed, Michael still remembered the karate lessons he took as a teenager. Though over 40 years had gone by, the muscle memory remained. As Patricia's nails raked his skin, Michael struck her solar plexus with an open palm, not hard enough to leave a mark, but with enough force to knock the wind out of her. Patricia collapsed onto the floor, gasping for air in a state of panic, her hands clutching her throat. As Patricia struggled to breathe, Mary's panic intensified, watching her mother's frantic attempts to draw in air. Meanwhile, Michael remained calm. He knew she'd recover within a minute, and he wasn't going to waste any time. He quickly moved to his office at the back of the house, aware that once Patricia regained her breath, things would escalate further. Grabbing his MacBook Air and iPad, he logged into the Wi-Fi router and swiftly changed the password. Patricia, who only ever used her phone for social media, would be cut off from their banking and other accounts without Wi-Fi. Without hesitation, Michael packed a few changes of clothes into his backpack and walked out of the house. He passed Patricia, who was sitting on the floor, still gasping but slowly regaining control of her breath. As he stepped out, he left behind 30 years of what once seemed like a perfect marriage. He drove straight to a nearby McDonald's, where he connected to their Wi-Fi and opened Safari. Michael logged into their joint American Express account, paid off the balance, and closed the card. Next, he accessed their Chase account, cleared the remaining balance, and wrote a check to himself from their joint account for half of the remaining funds. Years ago, he had registered his landscaping business as a payee, preparing for a moment like this. As he finished his financial cleanup, Michael received a call. It was Damian Roy. Michael, Damien said, his voice steady and emotionless. Damien, Michael responded, recognizing the voice of his daughter's soon-to-be ex-father-in-law. What a mess this is, huh? It couldn't be worse, Damien replied, opening the door for Michael as he arrived at the Roy residence. Let's go sit on the patio, watch the golfers. He offered a glass of bourbon. Damien's house overlooked the golf course of the country club, where both families had spent countless hours. Damien's wife had even won the women's championship 4 years running, something Damien took great pride in. Sitting on the patio, bourbon in hand, Michael broke the silence. How's Daniel holding up? Damien tilted his head slightly as if to say, You really want to ask that? Michael sighed. Yeah, dumb question. What he's going through. There's not much worse than that, is there? Except for losing a child. He trailed off. But that's exactly what's happening, Damien interjected quietly. He's losing his youngest son, and you're losing your youngest grandson. Michael stared into his glass. How could Mary do this to him? What happened to her? Damien shook his head. She was always spoiled, and instead of confronting it, you let it slide. Now we're all paying for it. It seems I bear as much responsibility as anyone else for this mess. Damien gave a slight shrug. Maybe, but that's doubtful. She's an adult, capable of making her own choices and owning up to them. Michael nodded in silent agreement, taking a slow sip of his bourbon. Where is Daniel hiding? And I assume William's with him? Michael asked. They're at the lake house. Daniel doesn't want to face Mary, and William's too young to witness his mother unraveling like this. Thankfully, James is still too young to remember any of it, Damien replied. James won't remember, Michael said softly, but Daniel will. He was thrilled to have 2 sons. Now, all of this... His voice faltered, and tears filled his eyes. Damien exhaled. I get it, man. Honestly, I don't want to see Mary or her mother either. I just found out my so-called loving wife knew all along that there was a possibility Daniel wasn't the boy's father, and she never said a word. Now I'm starting to think Mary's not even my daughter. I've abandoned Patricia, too. Damien shook his head. Good God, just when I thought things couldn't get worse, you say, Hold my beer. Michael raised his glass in acknowledgement, a shared understanding passing between them. Damien continued, And as furious as I am, Sarah's beyond that. She's terrifying right now. Sarah Roy, Damien's wife of 32 years, had always been strong-willed, coming from a ranching family and excelling in sports through high school and college. Like her namesake, Sarah had been a star in both tennis and golf before becoming pregnant with Daniel and stepping away from a potential pro career. Damien shook his head. If it turns out Mary isn't William's mother, I think Sarah might have shot her. I've never seen her this angry. Michael sighed. Keep her under control, Damien. I don't want her getting in trouble because of those 2 unfaithful women. Things are bad enough as it is. I'm probably going to end up in jail. Damien raised an eyebrow. Wait, what? Jail? What the hell, Michael? Is that why you've got bandages on your face? Michael had stopped by a pharmacy on his way to Damien's to grab some ointment and patches for his face. He nodded slowly. Yeah, I grabbed Mary's used wipes to get a DNA test done, and when Patricia found out, she went after me. I hit her in the stomach in self-defense. Damien whistled, shaking his head. Jesus, Michael. Normally, I'd never condone hitting a woman, but if anyone ever deserved it, it's her. Michael nodded. I know they'll twist the story to make me the bad guy, so I'm probably getting arrested soon. That's why I came to talk to you. Can you reach out to Daniel? He'll need to manage things while I'm dealing with this. Daniel, Michael's son-in-law, not only worked for his landscaping company, but had also bought a 25% stake in the business. Damien nodded. Yeah, I'll get in touch with him. He's got a burner phone. I'll make sure you have the number. Their conversation was cut short when Sarah walked into the room, her gaze cold as she locked eyes on Michael. What's he doing here? She asked her husband, her voice icy. And why are the cops pulling into the driveway? Calm down, Sarah, Damien said. Michael's on Daniel's side. Turns out Patricia knew all about Mary's affair, and now there's a question whether James is even Daniel's son. Michael's left her. Before Damien could say anything more, the doorbell rang, and Sarah opened it to reveal the police. They stepped inside, glancing at Michael. "I knew this was coming," Michael said with a resigned sigh, as he turned and allowed the officers to handcuff him. The police sat Michael down and asked for his version of events. He explained how Patricia had attacked him and showed them the scratches on his face. Though the officers were somewhat sympathetic, they remained detached. "If you had called us when it happened, we might have arrested her instead of you," one of them said. "I'll have Daniel get your lawyer involved," Damien said firmly. Sarah embraced Michael as the police finally released him. 6 months later, the bitterness that had engulfed their lives had mostly eased. Mary had initially resisted Daniel's attempts at divorce, insisting on counseling first, and when that was denied, she responded by imposing stringent conditions. A DNA test ultimately confirmed that Mary was indeed Michael's daughter, leaving him with conflicting emotions. Michael had always cared for Mary as his child, but he had long lost respect for her. Their relationship remained distant, and Michael doubted that would change. She also prevented him from seeing his grandson, James. Michael was eventually acquitted of a Class C misdemeanor assault charge against his wife, thanks to a photo from a drugstore that showed clear evidence of fingernail scratches on his face. Michael, meanwhile, was moving forward with his divorce from Patricia, a woman he no longer trusted or respected. Patricia, however, fought the divorce every step of the way, with her lawyers throwing up obstacles. This resistance might have continued indefinitely if not for a terrifying event. Patricia and Mary were attacked in a parking lot after leaving a nightclub together. Although they couldn't identify their assailant, security footage captured a small figure dressed entirely in black and wielding a thin metal rod, brutally assaulting the two women. The footage showed the steel bar bending under the force of the attack. From their hospital beds, both Patricia and Mary claimed ignorance of their attacker's identity, suggesting that only Mary's husband, Daniel, had any possible motive. However, Daniel, standing 6'3" tall, was quickly ruled out due to the clear disparity in height. Despite an open investigation, the case grew cold, with no solid leads. Although the women sustained serious injuries, including broken bones and lost teeth, they were fortunate not to suffer permanent damage. They both stopped frequenting nightclubs and, growing increasingly paranoid, retreated into their homes where they began to bicker constantly. With no more resistance, the divorce process moved forward. Custody of William, Daniel, and Mary's son was decided as a 50-50th split, with Daniel being named the primary custodial parent. No child or spousal support was granted to either party. In addition, Daniel's name was removed from James's birth certificate, and DNA tests revealed that Oliver Smith was James's biological father. As a result, Oliver was ordered to pay child support to Mary. Following the revelation of his infidelity, Oliver's wife filed for divorce, citing adultery. He was ordered to pay not only child support for their 3 children, but also spousal support, as Oliver had insisted his wife be a full-time homemaker. These financial burdens plunged Oliver into poverty, a situation from which he was unlikely to recover. Daniel, however, managed to navigate the chaos of his unfaithful marriage with the steadfast support of his parents. He continued working with Michael and investing in their landscape business. William was a happy child for the most part, though he became visibly upset during the times he stayed at his mother's house with Patricia. His mother seemed constantly angry with his father or crying because she missed him. His grandmother, Patricia, appeared to harbor a never-ending rage, particularly directed at his grandfather, Michael. Michael's popularity with the single women at the country club only fanned the flames of Patricia's fury. Through it all, Damien and Sarah remained pillars of support for both their son and grandson. Sarah, despite the turmoil in their family, still managed to win the women's golf championship for the 5th year in a row, even with a few clubs missing from her set. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.